Yes, people, so if you are a children's entertainer, family entertainer, and you are doing magic shows and birthday parties and family events, you will have dealt with the issue of people chatting during your show, adults chatting. Some people on the Facebook groups, they will say chatty mums. I don't find it particularly mums, just people in the room are often talking during the show. I used to find this a lot more in the past, but changes that I've made in my magic shows make this issue a rare issue now in my shows. I have a lot of ways of dealing with this. So first of all, guys, the way you arrange the room is so important. If you've ever been to a small comedy club, stand-up comedy, you will see the way they arrange the chairs. You often sit feeling quite uncomfortable close to the people next to you. They arrange the chairs in a certain way. If chairs are just scattered around the room and you walk into a place where there's a show, whether it's a magic show at a children's party or a stand-up comedy night, you're probably going to sit as far away from the stage as possible. You're probably worried about getting picked on, etc. And you're going to just get your chair and be at the side, be in the corner. You need to arrange the chairs in like a little theatre formation. Sometimes we are in big halls and we have 20 people there. If 20 people, 30 people are separated in a big room, those people will not feel a togetherness and they'll start chatting on the side. They'll turn their chairs away from you. What I do is at the beginning of the party, I have things very informal. I have music going, bubbles, people arriving, chatting with one another. Hi, blah, 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 because it's their party. They're not here to see you, the star, the magician. You are one side of their party. I think something that doesn't work is starting the show immediately at the beginning, right at the beginning of the party, because you will have that whole greeting thing. What I do, I start the party with very informal things, music, bubbles, some jokes. Then about 20 minutes in, that's when I sit everyone down for the magic show. I sit the children in front of me and I have rows of chairs behind me for the adults.
I'm gonna give this to this lady here, that's for you.
I will go into the adults and I will say, hey guys, come have a seat for the magic show. It's a family show. And I will gesture them to come and sit down. This usually works. Sometimes, I must admit, it doesn't work because some adults think, well, oh, that's for the children, and they can just be a bit uncooperative and it doesn't work. And sometimes some adults will follow the other adults. So it has happened, it does happen where this doesn't work and all the adults just stand around and sit away from the show. But this works most of the time at my parties now. So I bring everyone, sit down, and we've got a family show. You sometimes get it where most of the adults will sit down, but a few of them still standing around talking, maybe backs to the show. What I try and do is quickly in the show, I will engage with those adults. So for example, I have some questions, hands up, hands down things about food. And at the beginning of the show, I will say, oh, madam, what, madam in the stripy dress? And she might not be looking at me and someone might tap her on the shoulder or something. And I will call to her, madam, what's your favorite food? And she say, pizza. And suddenly I've brought her into the show and everyone in the room feels like, oh, he might speak to me. So they tend to be a bit more engaged with you from that point. Quickly in the show, speak to people in the room, dotted around the room, and make it clear that because you're far away, it doesn't mean you're not involved and I won't speak to you, I won't pick on you. I'm not one to sort of bully the audience and pick on them, as people, sometimes people will say that just because you've spoken to them. Like later on they'll say, oh, I was really away and you picked on me, but I like to engage with them quickly and establish that this is the whole room involved in this show. I also think in a children's show, which is a family show because everyone's in the room, make sure you speak to the adults and speak to them quickly at the start of the show to establish that this is a family show, and have a joke or two up front. Have a joke earlier on that is one for the adults. And I don't mean rude jokes because I don't believe in putting them in a family show, but that is a topic for another video. So engage with the adults through the show. When you see groups that are chatting, go for that group. Not in a rude way. I don't believe in telling off your audience. Very important, likability as an entertainer. You don't want to turn your audience against you, so never make a comment about there being rude or something, because the thing about doing children's parties, magic shows, birthday parties, in family parties, is the people there are not arriving into a theatre or a cinema and talking loudly. They're in a party, so if they are talking loudly during your show, they're not really being rude. You might think they are, but they might just not be aware that they're kind of part of a show. They think, oh, that's for the kids. And actually, some children's entertainers, it's their fault that this happens. Because they've been to other parties and they've had an entertainer who's in the corner with the children waving a balloon, and it's nothing to do with the adults. And those entertainers do not engage the adults. They don't make it a family show. And actually they've trained the adults to believe that that's just for the children. And I'm afraid that a lot of children's entertainers, they're not family entertainers, and they do just think, oh, it's just for the kids. I went to film an entertainer once doing a show, and she did not engage the adults at all, not once. She didn't look at them, she didn't speak to them, she didn't ask them a question. And I was filming the show to make a video for her, and all the adults from the beginning of the show till the end just looked at their phones. They actually weren't chatting, they were just on their phones. They didn't really know each other, but it's a shame because you can get so much more fun engaging with the grown-ups. You're less likely to have them chatting, and they'll have a good time. They're less likely to be on their phones as well. And that's a topic for another video. Get your audience off their phones. Gonna make a note of that. Now, stopping the audience chatting during your show, there are strategies, there are techniques that will work, but sometimes you just have to give up on it. I've been in events such as big Asian parties in the evening where you've got round tables full of people spread out across the room. You can't bring those chairs up to the stage area. So there are people dotted around the room. They will be talking in the show. I just give in and think, okay, there's going to be some background noise. The show isn't as good in that kind of situation, I find. I think at that point it's just good to get on with it. Again, I don't think you should tell your audience off, say they have to shush during the show. It's better to engage them and encourage them to be a part of the show and have fun and joke with them, to bring them in. But there are some venues that unfortunately you're best just to give up on it. Plow on with your show with some background noise. The other thing I like to do a lot in my shows, I use loads of music and sound effects. I'll be making other videos about this. And one of the reasons I use lots of bits of music underneath my act, in talky parts, I will have low level music. And actually, if there's a bit of background chat, this background music will, not completely, but it will cover somewhat of that background noise. It's another of many reasons to put lots of music into your show. I went to a lecture at a magic club once of a magician who was maybe in his 70s, been doing this a long time. I was actually chatting with my friend during his lecture. ADHD magicians, we're naughty talking at the back, and he told me off, rightly so. I was talking during his lecture, but he was talking about people chatting during the show and the way he sort of tells them off, basically. Now, although for me, I thought, oh yeah, he's got me, I shouldn't have been talking during his lecture, that's my bad. The way he did it was very snappy and telly-off kind of way. And I just think you can tell people off, but at what cost? I mean, if you shut some people up but they hate you, you're gonna hate your act. It's happened to me in the past where I've got a bit teacherish with people. I have shut them up, but then they just don't like me for the rest of the show. They're looking annoyed. So it doesn't really end well.
You need to subscribe. Meg Hand subscribed. Why don't you?